Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for Filling New York City's Emergency Food Gap. I am Chris Grace. I'm CEO at Foodprint Group. We partner with food, hospitality, and corporate office teams to eliminate waste, and we are so lucky to work with restaurants, hotel groups, food retailers, and other food businesses here in New York, which is our home, and globally, to reduce waste and recycle more. Right now, we are working really hard to figure out how to help our clients who are facing incredibly tough times, as you all know. And so we've pulled together this webinar series. This is the first of a series of 4 webinars we've organized that are based on questions we're hearing from our clients and friends in the food community. Today it's donations, which is so timely and so needed. But over the next 3 Wednesdays, we have on the 8th, a session on hauler management. On April 15th, a session on waste hauler management, and what's changed in the current environment. On April 15th, we're going to be talking about takeout and delivery during COVID-19, takeout and delivery being brand new to a number of companies that we work with. And on the 22nd, we are going to talk about planning for the food safety new normal and how sustainability aligns with best safety practices. So we hope you'll join us, and please spread the word. So before I dive in on today's session, a bit of Zoom housekeeping. This session will be recorded, and the audio recording will be available for download from our website, and we will share the links with all of our attendees. All attendees will be muted for the session, but please share any questions that you have for our panelists via chat. And let's dive in. So the purpose of our session today is to make it as easy as possible for interested restaurants and other food businesses to donate foods, particularly in light of the COVID impacts. I know I'm preaching to the choir when I say now it is more important than ever in light of our restaurant, food service, food pantry, soup kitchen, so many closures and decreases in business. Need is greater while supply has dramatically dropped. Prior to COVID, we were already in a crisis situation with 1 in 8 New Yorkers not sure where their next meal would come from. At the same time, nationally, 40% of the food grown in the United States is wasted from farm to plate. And so groups like ours and many of our partners have been working on that issue for quite a while. You know, and the highest percentage of food waste happens at the end of the chain. So in restaurants, food retail, and in our homes. So let's talk about how we can ensure some good, healthy food gets eaten by those who need it right now. And while we've honed in on New York City for this session, content will be useful to people around the country. And if you are on the line, but you're not here in New York and you are seeking donations partners, please reach out directly to us after the session and we will work with you to make a local connection. We are very lucky to have 3 of New York City's top food rescue organizations represented on the call, along with representation from New York City's new COVID-19 food czar team. So we have Matt Jozwiak, the CEO of Rethink Food. We have Dana Siles, Regional Coordinator at Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. Courtney Lum, who leads procurement and logistics at City Harvest, and Monika Wysocki from New York City DSNY historically, but now she has moved over with Commissioner Garcia to work on our emergency food and food supply responses in light of COVID. The format today is that I'm going to give a very brief overview and share some resources, and then I'm going to hand the mic over to our experts to talk about their services, who they're serving, what types of organizations, which communities, what types of foods they're looking for, and the best ways for you to connect with them. And they're going to share kind of how things have changed and what they're facing in the current environment. And then we're going to dive into a moderated Q&A. So let me jump in. Got speakers. Now, this presentation is not meant really for you to read every word. This we've pulled together as a resource guide, which is why we'll be sending this to you after the presentation. But really, the goal here was to put as many resources and potential partners in front of you as possible, and connect you right here on this call with some great organizations working here in New York City. So I don't want to spend too much time because our partners are going to talk about these things, but what we do know is no matter how hard we work in our kitchens and in our places, in our food places, that when we produce food, there are leftovers, there are byproducts, there are things that are still edible at the end of the day. And our goal today is to help you figure out how to move as much of that as possible to people who need it now, as at the same time, we know that you work very hard to reduce waste in your food places. So take stock of what you have at the end of the day, and then reach out to active donations partners. We've put together a list of partners we know are still picking up right now. There are hundreds of organizations that are still receiving donations, and that's and you will hear a little bit more from Monika about how to make a connection to food pantries and soup kitchens in your own community and how DSNY and her team can help. So reach out to donations partners. You're going to be seeking those who are good matches for the quantity and the types of food you have. And again, you'll hear more from our experts on what they're looking for, and hopefully that will help to move some food right away. And then we're looking at food safety in this process. We're working, you guys are restaurants, food businesses, food processing operations, you know food safety. So we're not going to try today to teach you anything that you don't already know, but our participants will talk a little bit about what they're dealing with in light of COVID, and anything that has changed. First, we want you to know that food donors are protected by the Federal Good Samaritan Act, which was signed into law in 1996 under Bill Clinton. We still hear all the time when we're working with companies that they're concerned about liability and food safety issues when they're donating foods. There have been no lawsuits on record in the history of food donations here in the US. And not only do we have federal protections, but New York State beat the federal government to the punch in 1981 with our own Good Samaritan Act that covers canned, perishable, and farmed foods here in New York. So please don't let fear of liability get in the way, particularly when you guys are so good at handling food. What foods can be donated? If you would serve it to a customer or a staff person, it can pretty much be donated. So really, really kind of step back and be creative, and don't rule things out easily. Obviously, you want to avoid things that you wouldn't serve, that you wouldn't sell: dented, swollen, leaky, rusty canned food, dry goods that show evidence of moisture or pests, food package, anything that comes in packaging that has been opened and you're not trusting the safety of that food. And then some partners will have concerns about certain foods. So for example, prepared but uncooked. So think sushi. There are some challenges there, but for the most part, if you would eat it, please consider donating it. And we've brought together partners at different scales, so no amount is too small for some of our partners here in New York City. Again, food safety, you know this, and we are just hearing from our clients that things are even just getting more stringent as they figure out how to deal with COVID, and how not only are they continuing to do best food safety practices in their operations, but they're having to deal with if a staff person is ill, how to handle this, how to, we have examples where clients, if one person is testing positive for COVID, everyone is going home and being quarantined for 2 weeks. A new team is coming in, the place is being sanitized, the prep space is being sanitized before people come back in. And we're seeing a real high level of communication. And I think that's something that we would really encourage, a high level of communication with your customers. We also want to see that high level of communication with your donations partners. And again, we'll hear a little bit more about safety issues later. We have been doing research to try to keep track of who's still picking up, because so many of our clients require pickup to participate in donations programs. So this is a short list. There are so many partners in New York City that can receive food. And if you reach out to, and Monika, you told me I could say this, if you reach out to Monika Wysocki directly at DSNY, DSNY and the COVID food team, along with HRA, are week to week, or in some cases day to day, updating their lists of which food pantries, soup kitchens, and other emergency food outlets are accepting food. So if you are looking for someone in your neighborhood and you want to know who's still open and when you can deliver, reach out to Monika. If you are looking for someone who can pick up, the organizations City Harvest, New York Common Pantry, Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, Replate, Rethink Food, Transfer Nation that we've listed here can pick up. You do need to contact, everybody is dealing with schedule changes, and so reach out. We know that, for example, New York Common Pantry has more limited pickup schedule right now, but they are picking up. We've pulled together these references. All these links are live to help. So again, we will share this presentation at the end. You know, often when we're talking donations, we talk about tax deductions. I'm not going to spend time now talking about your opportunities for tax deductions, but know that the ReFed link that we're including here is fantastic. And their food waste action guide includes a wonderful description of the process for recording total food donated for your tax deductions. So, all right, let's dive into the meat of this conversation. I am going to stop sharing slides, and hopefully we'll be able to see some of our speakers. Great. So we're going to start with Matt Jozwiak, the CEO at Rethink Food, and learn a little bit more about their organization and how you can engage.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, and big fan of what you guys do. So can you guys hear me all right?
You sound great.
Yeah. Okay. So more or less, Rethink has had to pivot in the last 3 weeks. We're watching food donations drop off like pretty drastically as restaurants close. And what we did is we basically put in systems at corporate cafeterias and restaurants with bins and standard operating procedures so that they could donate as much food as humanly possible. And then our commissary kitchen would basically cater community service organizations based off of what they needed that day. So it was a very, it was a little different, but then we started, we realized that we needed to decentralize our operations, because as this virus spreads, it's going to be challenging. If somebody gets sick, you're going to have to, if Rethink shuts down, that's 12 community service organizations that are going to go without food. And that just can't happen. So what we did is we started a program where we're giving small amounts of capital up to $40,000 to restaurants, where basically they're going to be in charge of keeping 4 people employed, because the way that we look at it is if we don't keep people employed, they're just going to be people we have to feed. So 4 people employed, they're going to be required to make one single menu item that, which eliminates a lot of the organic waste that kind of happens with big menus. And they're going to be in charge of producing, up to 500 meals a day. We just launched with a really kind of infamous restaurant. I guess Daniel Hume broke the news, but we're doing 2,500 meals a day out of 11 Madison Park, which is allowing, in 3 different groups, which is allowing us to kind of hit the nail on the head. But in means of food donation, as it kind of dries up, what we've been thinking about is, maybe it's time for people to start buying food. The upper supply chain has been kind of really damaged by this, and small farms are getting really hurt, and they're considering not planting for the next season. So the next thing we're looking at is as this kind of continues to roll up the supply chain, how do we buy food? How do we get and utilize these farmers and convince them that there will be a place for their food to go next season? So it's been an interesting time for sure in the last couple of weeks.
No, thank you. That's those are really large and critical questions about why we need emergency food in the first place, because obviously we needed a lot of it long before COVID, and so many people who require assistance are in minimum wage jobs, and many of those exist in the food sector. And how do we make the shifts so that we're not here, and you're right, that people can afford food, and that our farmers have a market, because we're seeing pivoting there too, in terms of wholesale business drying up, how can we reach end consumers and things. So this is, so many topics. We should, when we get up the call, we can plan the next 3 webinars. So Courtney, jump on in.
Yeah, so City Harvest, as I'm sure many of you know, is a pretty large food rescue organization. We plan on moving at least 20 million pounds of food from now until at least June, just to even cover the COVID relief. And just like Matt was saying, of like having to rethink and re-strategize how we are serving the New York City population, City Harvest is also doing the same. So on a local level, we have been working with a lot of our restaurants, and as they close or as they reprioritize what they are able to do and capable of doing, we've been actually seen an increase in donations from them, and then a trend of once those restaurants closing, they're opening up and preparing meals for our agencies, for our staff, for those that are helping out. In terms of distribution, as I was saying before, it's been, again, a day-by-day change when we reevaluate what our network is capable of receiving. And that really is starting to shift how we even bring in the food. We're looking at trying to bring in smaller packaging. So, our smaller agencies and networks can distribute food more easily. We are a large organization, so we tend to run in pallet sizes. And now we're rethinking, okay, how do we get 5-pound bags? How are we going to make it not just 5-pound bags of potatoes, but how can we make sure that there's a variety of product in there? So, we can practice social distancing, redistribute in a really safe way, and, kind of alleviate some of the stress on our network and our agencies. So things like that, we're really strategizing and thinking, and it changes every single day. I think, Matt, what you brought up about the larger scale of thinking for the supply chain is really accurate as well. So another branch of what City Harvest does in terms of food sourcing is working on a national scale and a national level. So that's actually what I have been working on with our food bank members, across the country, some farms, and just how we're able to reevaluate the top level supply chain. And even they're thinking, our food banks, our networks need smaller packaging, and how they can even prioritize and shift their workers and their employees to get that product along. So it's happening on all different levels, and it happens every single day that something seems to change. But at the moment, we're really focusing on shoring up our partners and just making sure that we are getting the most food as possible that is needed and wanted to the right sources.
That's great. Thank you. Again, there's so much to unpack in all this about the broader food system. Yes. Here. And I mean, one of the things, we worked really hard on over the last few years was state legislation to provide funding for farmers to pick, pack, and ship foods for donations, because the federal program just really didn't support the farmers of the scale, generally LLCs, the farmers of the scale we were working with. And I think this might be something we really need for the food sector in general right now as a Band-Aid. Like, how do we provide more funds to the people who know how to make food to get that food to the people that need it today? It's really an interesting thing. So Dana, tell us what's going on at Rescuing Leftover Cuisine.
So first of all, I want to thank you for having us. And you guys, Matt and Courtney, are doing amazing work. So it's really incredible. So my name is Dana. I'm the New England coordinator for Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. I'm speaking on behalf of Robert Lee, who's the co-founder, who runs the New York City operation where we're headquartered. And Rescuing Leftover Cuisine is a nonprofit that provides a volunteer platform to pick up excess food from food service providers and then transport it to human service agencies. We basically match the donor to the recipient based on schedule, location, logistics, how much food storage they have, what exactly they need, who they're serving, when they're serving them. There's so many logistics to factor in. And Matt and Courtney and I were joking around before the session started how everything that we have essentially matchmaked over the past few years has been turned inside out and upside down the last few weeks, and we've basically reinvented the wheel every single day this past few weeks, and we will continue to do so. And, you know, the way our operation works is we don't have a minimum food requirement, a minimum amount of pounds of food requirement to pick up food. So we'll pick up as little as 5 pounds of food, because 1.25 pounds of food is the equivalent of one meal. So we don't see it as 5 pounds. We see it as 5 pounds times many, many, many opportunities. So we're good at filling in those cracks. We've even collaborated with big organizations like you guys. I believe Robert told me he worked with you guys last week, City Harvest, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it's important that we're all working together during this time, and always, but especially during this time, in order to serve those in need. And people who never knew what food insecurity was are now about to experience it, or have had their first experience with it. And it's really scary. But we're all doing our best to serve the public to the best of our ability. As far as volunteer safety, we have instructed our volunteers to wear gloves, to practice social distancing. We're working with the restaurants to bring the food outside, allow a 6-foot distance between the volunteer and themselves, to then transport the food. And then when they bring it to the recipient, same thing. They're leaving the food outside. The recipient is meeting them outside 6 feet away. Everybody's practicing with just being incredibly careful to take care of themselves and to take care of the food properly. And I can answer any direct questions, but that's the in a nutshell version.
No, that's great. We will take some questions soon. I'm going to jump to Monika, but thank you so much here. There we go. So Monika, tell us what's happening with the new, talk about quick ramp up for the COVID-19 response team that's focused on food.
Sure. And thank you so much for having me on the call. Just want to start by thanking also my fellow speakers who are really out there on the front lines of this crisis, and have been doing so for many years, in many cases before this crisis began. So, the crux of Commissioner Garcia's new role as food czar is, addressing this monster challenge, which is that even before the crisis began, more than 1 million New Yorkers were food insecure, and that number goes day by day given the economic impact of the crisis. So I want to share with all the participants today how the city is approaching this problem, both for your awareness and also just because we want you to be spreading the word of all of the options that are available right now to food insecure New Yorkers. We have two work streams, one that is focused on feeding New Yorkers and another that is focused on our supply chain, both monitoring the supply chain and figuring out solutions when needed. Matt spoke a little bit about some of the decisions that especially small farmers are being forced to make right now. We're also monitoring workforce availability, some of the labor impacts of this crisis, as well as transportation, including long haul and short haul trucking, as well as the major distribution hubs in the city, places like Hunts Point, making sure that all of those locations and all the staff that service those critical infrastructure and logistics functions are also just as safe as all the volunteers and all the chefs and cooks that are out there making this happen. On the Feeding New Yorkers piece, we have stood up a number of programs. I hope that you all know that free meals are available to all public school students at more than 400 DOE locations citywide within the next 24 hours. Very pleased to share that we'll be launching a map that has real-time open and close information on more than 800 pantries and soup kitchens in New York City, alongside those more than 400 Department of Education school locations. So any New Yorker will be able to access that map and find the nearest location to them. Now, all that said, we know that that is not enough. Not all New Yorkers right now are in a position where they can go out and make use of those grab-and-go meals. So the city has also stood up probably the largest food delivery system on an unprecedented scale. And we're delivering in the tens of thousands of meals through that system. So very proud of the work that has happened in the last week and a half. And again, just wanted to share all that with you as it relates to what all of you on the call are thinking about, and you know, your ability to be generous. One of the things I want to say is that the Donate NYC food portal was built exactly for situations like this. And I know that there's going to be an outpouring of generosity and support right now, and that we're all doing a lot of matchmaking. And my hope that out of this matchmaking comes a sustainable, resilient system of community links that will last above and beyond this crisis. And the food portal is part of that. So I strongly encourage all the listeners on the call that do operate food businesses or food organizations to join that portal. It's a very quick sign up, and you will be, you know, connected to those in your community that are in the most need. But again, thank you for having me, and apologize I'm not able to be on video due to my bureaucratic computer without a video feed.
No problem. Thank you so much. Gosh, you guys all make me proud to be a New Yorker, I have to say. So much happening so quickly here. The mobilization is impressive. Matt, first we'll start with you. Could you talk a little bit more about the restaurant program? You described it, but I mean, something that participants could engage in right now, and how?
Okay. Yeah. So the restaurant response program is meant to kind of just hit like a couple different things, you know, like you talk about employment. It's super, super important. And Dave Barber and Dan Barber at Blue Hill are working on some really great stuff where they're trying to really focus on that supply chain. And we really need to kind of build something with sustainability in mind, you know, and also think about like the kind of opportunity that, you know, that we have, you know, the nonprofit food system and the for-profit food system have kind of always struggled to work together. I think that everybody on this call can say something about how it's difficult to kind of coordinate and deal with getting donations from folks and how that all works. And it's very challenging, and they have an idea of what it is, and we have an idea of what it is, and it's kind of hard to meet. They seem to think that, like you said, and like we always have to start every panel with, that it is not illegal to donate your food. I have to say that like 30 times a day. And like, there seems to just be some type of disconnect. Yeah. So our hope is that with this program, that even past this and into the future, that, you know, restaurants can utilize their excess food to basically make meals and catered meals once we don't have to do single packaged anymore. Mm-hmm. And we can kind of create a new source for meal generation through restaurants. And then restaurants can kind of have an underlying revenue. It just kind of makes more sense to utilize sunk costs is what we found. Like Rethink has a giant kitchen with 20 some odd staff members. You know, the restaurants have a giant kitchen with 20 some odd staff members. Like maybe it makes sense, instead of doing both of these things in separate places, to just do them and pay one of them more. And since I'm not really interested in opening up a big restaurant, maybe this could be a long-term thing where I could just pay restaurants like 11 Madison Park or Make It Nice to, hey, I need you to generate 1,000 catered meals every day, and I'll give you $1.50 a meal. And that's cheaper than what I'm paying to do it at Rethink. So we're really looking at like, how do we fix a lot of problems in the food system for the long term? Because, you know, obviously, and thank the Lord, it's a once in a lifetime chance, because this would be awful to ever go through again. But we actually get a chance to really rethink the food system. No pun intended.
No, thank you. Thank you. That's helpful. I think that I think we're all sitting here looking at this moment going, okay, this is so horrible, but how do we come out on the other side of this and somehow better for it, particularly when we're talking about the food system. You mentioned, you know, when we can get back to, you know, when we no longer need single packaged meals. That's a question I have for you all, because so often we're talking about donating either raw ingredients or, you know, back of house leftover line items that are not portioned out. They're, you know, they're in serving containers. And so the question is, what are you looking for from your food partners right now in terms of the types of food, and has it shifted dramatically? And are you looking for more individually packaged, or are you still able to work with partners to prepare to prepare food on site? Like, what has shifted there?
I can answer this one if you would like. So this is Dana from Rescuing Leftover Cuisine. You know, because we match every donor and recipient based on very specific needs, even though, yes, our needs have changed slightly, I think for the most part, we're continuing to do what we always did, which is to recover food that has been professionally created by a food service provider and donating the excess food, prepared or ingredients, to the human service agencies who will properly distribute it. I think that there's some human service agencies that definitely do prefer the prepackaged food, but there's others that, you know, they're working in a big kitchen. So when they're able to get, you know, pounds and pounds of potatoes to be able to put into the pot in the kitchen, it works really well. The beauty of organizations like all of ours here together is that we do that matchmaking kind of on the behalf of all of our donor partners, because we know who needs what and when they need it. And especially now when that is changing by the day, or even by the half day, should I say, it's more important than ever to make sure that the right food gets to the right human service agencies. It's not a one size fits all. It never has been, and it definitely is not now. And that, on that note, I just want to say that with RLC, we're doing free pickups right now. So if you're a restaurant that needs to offload food because you're going to be temporarily closing, or you're still open for takeout, but you have 5 pounds, 10 pounds, 20 pounds of food at the end of the day left over, give us a call. Let us know. We'll get a volunteer over. We'll pick it up. We'll bring it to the right recipient, not just any recipient, but the right recipient. But, you know, I would say on our end, our needs haven't changed as much, but the HSAs that we're serving, even though so many of them have closed, the ones who remain open are desperate for food. They need food. So any food donation goes a very long way.
Yeah, and this is Courtney from City Harvest, and just to piggyback off of what Dana has been saying is, yes, it's the same thing for City Harvest as well. The agencies that are open still are definitely still in need, and if anything, are seeing an increased demand for donations and for food that's coming in. From City Harvest perspective, we are still operating as we have been. You know, we have 22 trucks that are still on the road day and night, picking up and distributing and delivering food. However, because of the shifting landscape, our need has changed ever so slightly. So City Harvest has always been focused on providing fresh produce. In fact, over 60% of what we rescue and deliver has been, in fact, produce. At the moment right now, what we're really focusing on and asking for is shelf-stable items, just because that's what we're seeing and experiencing from our network. That's what they're saying they need the most of at the moment. So what they're really saying is, you know, whether they have the capacity to store it or even repack it into smaller packaging to distribute out to the people of New York City. Just like when we go grocery shopping, we're stocking up on, you know, canned goods, beans, frozen items, any kind of shelf-stable things. That's also what our agencies are looking for as well. So although we have and are able to still receive some prepared food, we are definitely trying to put an emphasis on more of the shelf-stable items. But again, we are always, people still need produce, people still accept prepared food. So that's kind of where we are. We are just leaning towards shelf-stable at the moment.
Got it. One of the, and I know, Matt, you've spoken about food workers already. One of the questions that I received when we first sent out this invite was, how can I support food industry workers who are now out of work? Like, how can I find organizations that I know are trying to particularly target that audience, and you know, including undocumented workers who may be afraid to go to traditional avenues for support. So we're wondering, I know, Courtney, City Harvest, you have your mobile markets that are out in communities that are really there to improve access. Can you talk a little bit about those? And then I'd love to open it up to the rest of the team to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So City Harvest has 9 mobile markets all throughout the 5 boroughs. Those are open-aired, free distribution of produce items that we hold throughout every month. In fact, we have 3 coming up just this week in Astoria, Bed-Stuy, and I think we had 1 today in Staten Island. And so what those programs are really just to serve those in the area, anyone who is able and willing to come and, get this fresh produce, they are able to. Our mobile markets have actually seen a 30% increase in attendance. So it's really important that we are maintaining these schedules and continue to distribute this free fresh produce. We've actually adjusted our operations also in accordance to the CDC guidelines. So, we're really adhering to the social distancing, the 6 feet, and all the social hygiene procedures. But again, because we're seeing such an increase in demand from that, some of the testimonials and some of what our staff and volunteers are experiencing are, brand new people that are in fact showing up. A lot of younger people who are coming instead of, in lieu from their adults or their parents, grandparents, they're coming to pick up for them. So we are seeing a lot of fresh new faces, which is very unfortunate. And that's why it's so important for us to be able to continue donating such great fresh product.
Thank you. Does anyone else want to speak to how we're reaching restaurant workers and particularly those who may be afraid to show up at traditional human services or community-based organizations if they are undocumented?
I think it's Matt here. Yeah, that's what really we're worried about. So I think that if it's about getting cash into the hand of the restaurateur, and I know that eating out and takeout and everybody kind of probably stocked up and is cooking at home a lot, but try to order some food, and Left Bank, Poulet Sans Tête is this restaurant and that I really think is doing something cool. It's on their website, you have your order and then it's donate a meal to a hospital member or somebody working on the front lines. And then they pack them up and they give them to a hospital. Just people are doing stuff and it might take a little bit of time and you might try some food you don't normally order, but try to order, try to get cash into it because I don't know if I should say this publicly, but as a 501c3, I'm definitely not going to hire somebody that's not documented. But as a restaurateur, I know that restaurants, when I cooked for 12 years, I know that they can do it. So they can get them cash. Nonprofits kind of can't, but I think they can, and they're going to be really dependent on them. And my friends who do own restaurants, I've seen some pretty heartbreaking stories of them, still paying them or still Venmoing them $100 a week or doing whatever they can. So getting those restaurants like Left Bank and Poulet Sans Tête, just ordering from them is support.
Yeah, no, we are hearing so many stories. Our friends at Cleveland Company, they're a catering company, and obviously that world is shifted tremendously. So they have shifted to home meals. They're making frozen chicken pot pie with chicken grown in New York State and all kinds of delicious things, but they're a percentage of their meals. I think Mary actually said 25% of what they're producing right now, they're donating to, and they also work with Chips. You mentioned Chips, Matt, in Brooklyn. But I think that there's a lot of that happening. I would love a place where we could all learn more about what all these different restaurants are doing so people can understand the sheer altruism and caring and the connection in the community. This session was on donations, but we are promoting all kinds of different things that are going on right now. Roar. I will send some links after this call, but there are groups that are working to advocate for all kinds of protections, for policies that came out within the CARES Act, and for, that are getting the word out on the New York State Shared Work Program. There are all these programs. that we are hoping our restaurant partners are getting benefit from, that will cover wages and insurance, and for the New York CARES Act, which is if you are going down, because even businesses that are staying open are at 50% or less production. They are using the New York State Shared Work Program so that they can bring their staff down to half time and bridge some of that gap with, say, another 25% that they can get of salary from the state. So I think that we just want to make sure, and I know the New York Hospitality Alliance has been a marvel in terms of the amount of communication on all of the federal and state programs available to restaurants and hospitality businesses right now. So please take a look at their website, because there's a lot of information out there. And yes, we absolutely want to just keep people employed. That is really the way out of this. But so back to donations and what restaurants can do now. And I think if we could kind of, if there was, before we open up to group questions, if there was one big idea you wanted to leave the food business operators on this call with, if we could go around the group, maybe we can start, why don't we start with Monika? Why don't we talk, because of what the city is doing, like what do you want? What's the big idea you want to leave with the food business participants on this call?
Sure. I thank you for giving me the first take on this. I think that, and you and I, Christina, we discussed this earlier, but I think that the people that are on this call because they believe, like we do, that, you know, donation is safe, it's effective, and it is just a way of life that we should take with us beyond this crisis, and it is something that we should build into this system to make it more resilient for the future. But I have a thought that maybe everyone on this call has some fellow, you know, friends in the respective hospitality worlds that you're a part of, that you could encourage in this moment. Also, you know, to sign up for the food portal, to take advantage of all the other donation options that have been offered on the call today. You know, the amazing option with Rescuing Leftover Cuisine that, you know, it even includes delivery and pickup. So I would leave you all with the thought of recruiting someone else into this work.
That's a good one. Courtney, do you want to dive in?
Sure. So City Harvest is still fully operational, and we are always looking for new ways to distribute and to, you know, take in the food that you guys have to offer. Although we do have a larger minimum now of 3,000 pounds, which is about 2 pallets worth of food in order to be picked up. If there's anything under, we are absolutely willing to work with you and other partners to make sure that that food gets to the right place, because at the end of the day, all we're trying to do is distribute food to the network so that anybody and everybody has access to this food, especially in these unprecedented times. So please reach out to us if you ever have any questions, or even if you're not sure if you can donate it. We are always welcome and always able to help and just make sure it gets to the right place, even if it's not directly to a City Harvest specific agency.
Great. Dana?
Yeah, first of all, I want to echo what Monika said about spreading the word. I think knowledge is our best power at this point. And I think if all of you who are listening can please let your colleagues know in the food service industry that organizations like all of ours exist, that is going to make a very big difference to reduce wasted food substantially and get it to the people who absolutely need it, especially during this time. I think that would be the biggest takeaway. One thing I am going to point on is and I applaud anybody who's listening, because that means you care. That means you want your food to go to the right places and not be wasted and not put in a landfill and put into the bellies of those who need it. And that is of utmost importance. But I do want to say that one take home that I would like to put out there is a kickback for you. This was mentioned earlier. I think, Christina, you touched on it briefly, is the enhanced tax benefit. It's IRC section 170E3. It's an IRC code that the IRS created to incentivize businesses to donate property. And if you're a food business, then your food is your property. So that is something to consider during a time that you do have a loss in income. This will help offset your loss a little bit because you get a percentage of the fair market value of the food that you're donating. So obviously we can go into that another time, another webinar, but I just want to put that out there that it is something that you as a small business should absolutely take advantage of because of the great work that you're doing. That's it.
Excellent, thank you. And Matt?
People need to spend money who can spend money. And that means like supporting, like everything all the way up from, our Harvest, which is a great, food delivery program. Baldor just launched a $250 thing where you can get a bunch of beautiful produce that was only available to restaurants. Like, please support the innovations. Please donate to City Harvest, Rescuing Leftover Cuisine, really anybody that you can. Like, this is the time where food rescue organizations really need to push and, spend money. There's going to be a lot of stimulus. So it's important to spend it so that we can actually stimulate the economy.
Thank you. Thank you. That's great. So I'm getting questions from the audience, and I have a couple tactical questions. One is, due to the limited supply of donation packaging, how can restaurants prep their food for pickup? Like, what would you like to see in terms of packaging for the food that you're collecting? Why don't we?
I'll take that one if you'd like.
That'd be great.
So, like I said, we don't have a minimum or a maximum requirement of pounds for pickup. And we are doing free pickups no matter how much weight it is. And that food could be packaged in any way that, as a ServSafe certified food service provider, you find adequate. It could be a Ziploc bag, it could be tin foil, it could be a tin pan, whatever you believe is right. One thing to factor in is to make sure that it's leak proof, because a lot of our volunteers are either on foot or they're putting it in their car. So we obviously don't want any leakage. But as long as it is deemed safe and clean by your standards, then we will take it. And it does not have to be anything fancy.
That's great. Thank you so much. I have another question about donating meals to hospitals. Monika, I'm going to toss that at you because I'm sure that is something that's coming up right now in terms of caring for our healthcare workers. But anybody can jump in if you have information. But how should restaurants go about donating meals to hospitals, similar to the Buy a Meal, Give a Meal initiative that was discussed? Is there
Sure.
something?
Yeah, and I unfortunately there is no high-level coordinated way that this is happening, but I over the last 48 hours have just been so amazed and stunned at the number of restaurants in the city that have been able to launch small crowdfunding drives where they're promoting the ability for, as Matt said, those of us who are in a position to spend money, spend cash to put it into the restaurant system, promoting the opportunity that they will deliver meals to their local healthcare workers if folks donate. So, you can go on and say, I'd like to donate, X number of dollars to provide this many meals to healthcare workers. That unfortunately there is not a high level coordinated way for the city to do that now, but I think that model is beautiful and it works really well. The Mayor's Fund to Advance New York City is currently collecting also financial, cash assistance to be able to support vulnerable New Yorkers, which, in some cases does include our healthcare workers. And I can assure you that there are a lot of philanthropic efforts underway to, for example, adopt a hospital and provide, pantry boxes for all the staff in that hospital. So I know that's not a very specific answer, but encourage you all to get creative and use the potential for donations as a way to drive business to your businesses.
That's fantastic. No, that's a great idea to be looking at GoFundMe and some other crowdsourcing platforms to see what opportunities are available to connect directly with a restaurant who is serving people in their community. I had a question. I mean, it links a bit to, it links a lot to what Matt's been talking about, the program that at Rethink to get restaurants up and running to provide food for those in need. There was a question of, are there other grants or loans that may be available to not-for-profits or restaurants to ramp up production quickly? On the not-for-profit side, I don't know, Courtney or Monika, can you speak to anything that's been made available to soup kitchens or food pantries? Or maybe Matt, you could even speak to this. Are we seeing additional funding to produce more meals through philanthropy or public money?
So I'm not sure about to make new meals. Perhaps Matt is more able to talk about that. But at the moment, City Harvest is definitely seeing an increase in funding. And in fact, we have a lot of fundraising efforts right now to make sure that we are able to meet the increased need that the city is experiencing. So we do currently have a match going on. And of course, as a nonprofit, what we say is it's always the best way to help is to donate. And we do have a 2-for-1 match going on. So every dollar is being matched currently by one of our partners and our funders. And that really is just allows us to be able to really ramp up and shore up to make sure that we do get in the best food, the best products in order to supply this increased demand. So in terms of actually making or preparing the food, perhaps that's something that Matt could answer.
I unfortunately just got, my internet has just completely stopped working, and I missed the last 5 minutes. I'm just dialing in on my cell phone now.
No worries. Are there, just in addition to your fabulous program that is helping, that is raising money so that restaurants are producing food right now, are there other grants or loans that may be available to businesses or even to not-for-profits that have food production capacity, soup kitchens, for example, to ramp up production? To anything that you've heard in the grapevine? This is something that we can do a little research on after the call too. But Matt? Yeah,
not a ton. I mean, we have had our philanthropy manager, just basically that's all he's been looking for is just doing that, because it's basically as soon as we get enough cash to do the next one, we do the next one. I think that we'll have 10 by the end of next week, 10 locations. And but yeah, it's been challenging to find. And I think that, this is a time where we really have to look at philanthropy and how the system works, because we don't have time for 3-month grant applications right now. We don't have time for that kind of stuff. We have to the foundations really have to kind of step it up a little bit and have some trust in their charity partners and just, give money out, because the private wealth that I'm aware of that supports us on our board and stuff like that, they want to mobilize things. They want things to move, and they donate to foundations to get things to happen. So sadly, no, I haven't seen a lot about, other than the stimulus stuff that everybody knows and some discretionary funding from city councilmen. But other than that, no, nothing pretty large. Robin Hood did do an emergency grant that we received, but I think it's really time that we start rolling out these systems, because when the virus is over, what we're all going to have to deal with is basically it's going to be more or less like 2008 again, after all of this has happened. So we're rolling into something harder, and we have to be aware of that. In the food sector, I don't think in the healthcare system, I don't think this is anything harder than that, but we have to realize that we're really, we're rolling into a pretty difficult time for emergency food relief, and we need to be prepared.
Right. Actually, sorry to jump back in. I do know that City Harvest is also has teamed up with Met Council to demand that our state government provides emergency funding to support our work and the work of food pantries and food recipients throughout the city, in order to get the New York State Assembly to commit over $25 million in this year's state budget. So I know that is something that we are actively working on as well, but I don't think that will be determined for some time.
Well, that sounds like something
Yeah.
for all of us to advocate for.
Yes, absolutely.
We
Yeah,
have
Rethink sharing Jilly's message from Instagram this week, because I think Jilly, your CEO, did a really good job of like laying it out really exactly what she is trying to do. So that was really helpful for me, at least, to understand it.
Yes, absolutely. And I can't believe I forgot about that initially. But yes, there are efforts to get this funding through the state.
All right, we will share that on Instagram and LinkedIn and other places, Jilly's note from City Harvest, so that everyone can get their heads around what that funding looks like. You guys, Courtney, Monika, Matt, Dana, thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it, knowing how busy you are right now. And so, yeah, our hats off to you for the hard work that you're doing. We're in awe.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much for having us.
You too.
Thanks for keeping us organized.
Everyone stay safe.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Take care.